Good morning and welcome to the show. As I always say on this program, in politics, there is no coincidence. Everything is well scripted, well planned, executed to achieve specific political objectives. If you just got on, do me a favor, type in the comment section where you're joining me from. Share the video widely and type in the comment section where you're joining me from. Share the video widely and type in the comment section. Let me know where you're following the video from. Today, Alexander Cummings will be in court. He will be in court to listen to the ruling of the magistrate, of the judge, as to whether or not to allow TV cameras into the court. Something I already submitted is a waste of time brought about by lack of evidence. The question on the minds of most people that support Alexander Cummings and of Liberians is George Weah government going to use this case to disqualify Alexander Cummings from contesting the presidency in 2023? The answer to me is no. George Weah has advisors, including Emmanuel Shaw, Charles Bright, a lot of people who come from the 80s. When Samuel Kanyado disqualified members of the opposition from participating in the election, our troubles began. And so the real objective is not to disqualify Cummings, because I spoke to lawyers who told me that under Liberian law, there is only one basis for disqualification, and it will be conviction of a felonious crime. And so the categorization of the crime that has been brought against Honorable Cummings is a misdemeanor, a third-degree misdemeanor, which is punishable by a moderate fine or prison time not greater than 1 year. So even if in the unlikely event that Honorable Alexander Cummings was found guilty, if the government forces the judge to find Honorable Cummings, to pronounce Honorable Cummings guilty, it will not stand as a basis for disqualification. So there's nothing there. They cannot use that as a basis for disqualification. The country history, the TRC report, clearly states that exclusion of people from the political process and undermining democracy leads to chaos. And so all of those partners of the country, all of those international players, including America, France, Great Britain, the UN, none of them are going to allow for George Weah to use the courts to exclude any of his opponents. So what you have to understand is that Liberia is a very dependent country. The last time I listened to some government officials talk about meddling in Liberian affairs, nonsense. This very Liberian government stated on the record that it has hired lobbyists to promote Liberian interests in Washington. The truth remains that nobody governs Liberia without the approval of Washington. It has been that way for over 40 years. And definitely, independence from Washington requires economic alternatives, require security alternatives. No Liberian president have been successful in running this country without the approval of America. Without the approval of America. It will be foolhardy with all of the problems that George Weah has. Internally, he is broadly unpopular. His presidency is suffering from a legitimacy crisis. I mean, when elections are held in his so-called strongholds and he's losing them, his presidency is under a legitimacy question. And so his back is up against the wall. There is no way. I mean, we know we are stupid, but there is no way that he will be that stupid. Certainly, no way that George Manuel Weah will participate in a process to disqualify a presidential candidate. It's not going to happen. And people keep making comparison with the Brani Samuka case. This is not the Brani Samuka case. First of all, the action that Cummings is accused of, he didn't do, and because he didn't do it, there's no evidence to prove in court that he did it. Secondly, the Brani Samuka case is a post-election question. If you tell me that this will be like the Brani Samuka case, that means Cummings will run, he will win, and then the government will refuse to turn over power. That's the dumbest thing you can ever do. Then we'll have the Adama Barrow situation, where the regional government will send military power to compel Weah to live by the Constitution, Article 1. So when you are making a comparison between Alexander Cummings and Brani Samuka, you have to be careful that the similarities you're considering are in fact similar. Brani Samuka had a situation where he misapplied budgeted revenue, budgeted resources. He had a claim that the president of the Republic of Liberia at that time had instructed him to do so. He evidenced that with a letter, in fact, a photocopy of a letter. And although President Sirleaf was in Liberia, she didn't testify on his behalf that she had instructed him. And even given that, it would have still been wrong because the resources were private money, and the president of the Republic of Liberia does not control private money. And so they had some basis upon which to go after Brani Samuka. Yeah, I'm on air. It would mean that Cummings will win. Cummings will win the election, and then they will refuse to allow him to take the presidency. That is not something that is possible. Here are the things that I believe are possible. Number one, the GOL knows that because there is no evidence, they are not going to be able to secure a conviction. But here are their objectives. Number one, associate Cummings with crime to quote unquote dirty his clean hands. You see, the ANC and people like me and the Liberian populists always say to CDC that you're corrupt, we cannot trust you any longer, but Cummings has a clean hands. And this annoys Unity Party and this annoys CDC. And so they're working together to try and create some blemish. And this has become important to the ANC. I mean, this has become important to the CDC, especially now that they have reason to believe that Joseph Newman Boakai will not be contesting. This places Cummings in a very advantageous position that Joseph Newman Boakai has not been able to find, one, the money, his health is shaky, and he has not been able to consolidate the former ruling party, the Unity Party, behind him. There are talks of expelling him. There are talks of removing him as standard bearer. There are talks of people breaking away from his party. So Joseph Newman Boakai ran in 2017 with half of Unity Party. Now, that half is threatening to also further split. So Joseph Newman Boakai is asking himself a tactical question. Do I go to an election I know I'm going to lose? Because with a quarter of Unity Party, Joseph Newman Boakai only have those who are personally loyal to him. The real machinery, the broader party, has checked out. The broader party has checked out. Look around him. His chief of office staff is his nephew. The chairman of the party, Amin Mudad, his nephew. The architecture around Joseph Newman Boakai is tribal and family. And so what was a national cause, JMB for president, has become a local cause. So with his base narrowing and his health shaking and his finances not in order, it is clear for anybody who has a political eye and who has an analytical mind to see that Joseph Newman Boakai will not be running. And then they start hearing that he's making offers to Cummings, he's reaching out to the government to see if he can be paid to sit it out. So with Joseph Newman, you see, the ideal position of the government is to watch Cummings and Boakai run and then divide up the opposition vote. But if you have a situation where Joseph Newman Boakai is looking for a way out and Cummings becomes the only opposition leader, only serious opposition candidate, the Unity Party will gravitate to him, because after Joseph Newman Boakai let the Unity Party down, or he is overthrown by a internal party coup, which I hear is in the making, then clearly the angry voters, the change seekers, even some of Joseph Newman Boakai supporters, majority of them, will shift to Cummings. So like I said before on the show, Cummings will not win the elections because he is more popular than George Weah or Joseph Boakai. He will win the election because he is the most organized opposition player. He is going to be the only alternative to Weah. He is not going to win because he's popular. He's going to win because he will be the only alternative to Weah. With Joe Boakai marching off the ballot, Cummings becomes a major nightmare for the CDC and George Weah second-term election. A few weeks ago, the CDC was not even interested in taking anybody to court. The CDC was relaxing, enjoying the opposition tear itself apart. But now they see a danger. The danger that Boakai may not run, and then Cummings will have a free ride to the presidency. Because if the opposition only put out one candidate, that person by default becomes the opposition candidate, and people who don't like this government can all unite behind that person with a singularity, in purpose. That is the danger. And so, in order to check the danger, the GOL real objective is number one, associate Alexander Cummings with crime. Something to tell him, man. Because you can't tell him he's corrupt. You can't tell him that he has failed for 12 years. You cannot. So you need something. The ridiculous talk about Cummings being too short, being arrogant, all of these things, being gay, all these things are failed now. They're old and they're failed. And it worked against him when he had just come. But Cummings has been here for almost a decade. When I say here, I mean in the public eye as a politician. Because, of course, he had always been in and out of Liberia, bringing in help during the war, also supporting charity here in Liberia and in Africa. And then years before the election, always came and went back. But in the public eye, as a politician, a potential leader of the country for almost a decade, the people have not seen any of the claims that were made against Cummings. And so he's a stronger candidate now. So what the government is trying to do is to associate Cummings with a crime. The next thing the government is trying to achieve is the dissolution of the CPP. Walking away by the Unity Party did not dissolve the CPP. Walking away by the ALP did not dissolve the CPP. To dissolve the CPP, you need to go to court and show that there is a legal cause. And so what the government is trying to do in that case is really to dissolve the CPP. Associate Cummings with crime, dissolve the CPP. Even if they get the judge to rule that Cummings is guilty, they will not push for a prison sentence. They will say, we fine you $500. And then they will move to the National Elections Commission and say, bam, the CPP was created on a basis of fraud. And therefore, we want it dissolved. 2 or 3 nights ago, I think Serena Cephas was on Spoon, and the question was posed to him: what becomes of the victories of CPP in 2020? And he said he does not want to speculate, because you see, if something grows out of a crime, if something is not done legally, it's not done at all. I think that's a maxim in law, that this will be a fruit of a forbidden tree. In exclusionary practices in the courts, they usually will exclude evidence that were attained illegally. Or this will be a fruit of a crime that Abraham Darras Dillon and Prince Kemumwe and others that benefited from the CPP as an electoral coalition benefited from a crime, and that they were not properly elected. This could open the gates to hell. Because if you attempt to remove all these individuals from their elected offices, it will lead to a broader public outcry. It could lead to tensions and probably chaos if we are not careful. But Abraham Darras Dillon and Yomli Kagan Lawrence, who initially supported this lawsuit against Cummings, didn't think that far. That if you say that this document is fraudulent and you attain benefits from that document, you vote on it to be elected, then you can be pursued, or that office may be taken away from you. And so it's something that the Unity Party and its partners that are backing the frivolous lawsuit of Bernard Ure need to consider. But even if the government does not proceed to remove individuals who were elected on CPP ticket from parliament or from the legislature, it would criminalize the CPP victory of 2020. Throw it into controversy. That's one objective. The third objective, which I see here, is to create a basis for prolonged opposition fight. Because when the Unity Party said, we are leaving the CPP, and the ALP said, we are leaving the CPP, Cummings and Musa Belete-led Liberty Party should go talk to the voters. That was supposed to be the end of the CPP fight. But hold on. The government needs the CPP fight, the opposition fighting, to continue. Because as long as the opposition is fighting, nobody is checking the government. And so one objective of this case, because once the case is in court, you will have we that support Cummings attack Boakai and Ure. And the government wants that. The government wants the CPP noise to continue. And at this stage, with Unity Party trying to exit and with ALP trying to exit, it was going to bring an end. It was going to be an end to the opposition conflict, because there was going to be no more reason for us to attack each other. And so the government took US case, which is not really a case, US lies, and they abused their control of the court to make it into a case. Because the longer this case go on, the more the opposition, intra-opposition fight will continue. And so that's one of the objectives. That is one of the objectives of the government. Once you start a court case that is between opposition, members of the opposition, you are guaranteed that they will continue to attack each other. All of the people on social media that should be attacking the government are attacking me. Or all of my people are attacking Unity Party people. And so that is the government grand strategy. That's one of their objectives. And that objective is being attained. Objective number 4. Slow Alexander Cummings' campaign down. Now, once you are in court and the judge, you're in a court and the judge sets up a time for you to appear, you have to appear. That means now Cummings cannot draw up a campaign schedule. Cummings cannot draw up a campaign schedule. How do you draw up a campaign schedule when you don't have control of your time? And the government, by taking Cummings to court, basically have taken away his liberty. Yes, he's on bail. He can go home. He can sleep at home. But he cannot travel without the permission of the government. He can only go as far as the government will allow him to go. So in essence, Alexander Cummings is actually in prison. And he is serving a tenure Even without the case being proven, Alexander Cummings is under the control of the court. Look at this. I mean, I don't normally do this, but this human being does not have a brain. Someone is writing here that Alexander Cummings should prove his innocence in court. What planet are you from? Okay, I accuse you of murder. Can't prove that you're innocent. This is now how our legal system works. You who allege must prove. As far as we in Liberia know, Cummings is an honorable man who has lived by the law, who is a productive member of society, a generous citizen who goes out of his way to help in the cause of national development. And so he who alleges must prove. So the government, as I told you, is not after disqualification of Cummings. They don't have the possibility. Legally, even if they found Cummings guilty of misdemeanor, it cannot be a ground for disqualification. Two, if you apply the Browning-Samuka method, it doesn't fit here because Cummings have not won an election. Browning-Samuka went and participated in an election and won, and they stopped him from taking it. The election Cummings is going for, the government cannot keep him from taking office on account of these frivolous charges. Then we'll apply the Adama Barrow situation, where we go to ECOWAS, and ECOWAS will install the new president. And so that is not a realistic objective. The realistic objective in this matter is what I've listed. Number one, associate Cummings with crime. Number two, dissolve the CPP on the basis of fraud and fraud vitiates. Number three, create a basis for prolonged conflict, extended conflict in the opposition. Number four, take away time from Cummings. Take away time from Cummings. The one thing the government has succeeded in doing is taking away time from Cummings. Cummings cannot plan a nationwide campaign and go and schedule people because he doesn't know when the court will ask them to appear. He certainly cannot leave the country without the court's approval. So the government wants to control. The government wants to control Cummings's movement. I think I'm going to block this guy. His brain. He's using a name. God will watch between us, grateful Sammy. Yeah. Hopefully, God will give you a brain. You don't have a brain. So I'm just going to block you. That's it, really. You're blocked. Bye-bye. Take that noise someplace else. I have already blocked him. So yes, Alexander Cummings has to be stopped in the mind of the government because, mind you, we have 2 years to election. Cummings does not have the resource constraints that Bouaga has. So Cummings are already set to start his campaigning. Because guess who's campaigning across the country? The president. George Weah is campaigning. George Weah, Girls Brigade, George Weah Movement for Re-election, Movement for George Weah's second term, Nathaniel McGill Movement for Weah's second term. All these organizations are working across the country. They're giving motorbikes, they're having events, they're moving. But the president does not want Cummings to be doing same. And so this court trial is a way of keeping Cummings bogged down in Monrovia to give him a disadvantage. That is clearly the government objective. So these are the achievable objectives of the government, and that's what they're achieving now. So even without a court ruling, that Cummings is guilty or not guilty, Cummings has already been punished. He can't travel. He can't plan his own life because the court can call him at any time to create uncertainty around his candidacy. Is also another objective. This will be objective number 6. Create uncertainty about Cummings' candidacy. To create this uncertainty, someone said campaign has not started. Campaign has started. Don't fool yourself. On the books, they will tell you campaign is in 2023. No, campaigning started last year. Nobody wait for the period allotted by National Elections Commission. Nobody does. If you wait for that, you'll be juked. And so I just thought to do this podcast this morning to, number one, tell all Cummings supporters that there's nothing in this case that can lead to Cummings not running. So Cummings is definitely going to be on that ballot. But the government have other objectives, like I listed. And these are the objectives they are pursuing. They are not going to be able to meet all of their objectives because you cannot take this case for a year. You cannot. Because, unfortunately, the case they choose is not very strong. It's not strong at all. There's no evidence. I understand Cummings lawyers will be asking for discovery. They will be asking the GOL lawyers to show them all of the evidence that they have against them. Someone was asking, how can Cummings fight these objectives? On objective number 1, associate Cummings with criminality, they have failed because Henry Pedro Costa, in his overzealous, immature, and uncontrolled way, have exposed the government involvement that this is not a real criminal trial. So the integrity of the criminal proceeding itself has been badly damaged. So objective number 1 is already crippled. All Cummings needs to do is invest properly in communication to further broadcast and spread across the country the real motive of the government, which Henry Costa has exposed by virtue of his recklessness and just because Gordon let ugly. In fighting objective number 2, dissolve the CPP, Cummings' lawyers have to ensure that this case is thrown out of the window. Once you win the case, that means fraud is not proven. That means you cannot dissolve the CPP. Number 3, create a prolonged opposition fight. As long as the case is ongoing, there's going to be a basis for fight, intra-opposition fight. So again, if Cummings lawyers can get this case thrown out of the window, then the government would have failed. The government would fail in prolonging this opposition fight. And that objective number 5, keeping him, in Monrovia, is also destroyed if you are able to win the case or get it thrown out of court. So that's it. The government knows that there is no way under the sun that they are going to prevent Alexander Cummings from appearing on the ballot paper. They know that. Absolutely not. There's no way. But they know that they can drag the system to waste time. And time is irrecoverable. Every month you lose defending yourself in Monrovia is a month that you can't get back. And so Cummings have to find a way to keep powerful surrogates of his campaigning. You have to keep having programs. He should not stop his campaign. He should continue his campaign. He should use technology. We can have a rally in Cape Mount that Cummings address from his house on 15th Street. And he can answer questions. This is the technology age. Joe Biden campaigned from his laptop. People can have march rallies that can be addressed by Cummings from Monrovia. You can have meetings where people carry a Bluetooth speaker. You open a laptop. You can hear Cummings. You can see Cummings. Cummings can see you. You can ask him questions. He can answer. Cummings can deploy technology. So Cummings should not stop his campaigning. I actually believe we should hold rallies across the country. And Cummings should convert the trial into a campaign. I believe we should print thousands, tens of thousands of Cummings stickers and post them all around. Free Cummings. Because I submitted to you that Cummings is actually in a prison because he cannot travel without the court's permission. So his liberty is restricted. If supporters of Cummings convert this case into a political campaign, the government will see a disincentive and they will disengage. Once Cummings continues to campaign, the government will see that they are not meeting their objective. The biggest mistake Cummings can do is to put his campaign on hold. There has to be reports of Cummings addressing chiefs in Bond County whilst he's in Monrovia. Cummings needs to hold ANC events in Europe on his laptop and publish it in the press that the case is not stopping me. Look at your time. Look at your time. You are in 2022 elections next year. You cannot afford to wait for this trial to end before you campaign. You must use the trial as an instrument of campaign. We must deploy this trial as an asset. We have to drum up Cummings' campaign. If the government notice that Cummings' persecution is promoting him, they will stop. The government goal is not to promote Cummings. So once it starts to promote Cummings, the government will leave it alone. Just watch it. If the judge rules in favor of televising the case, we will proceed to turn the courtroom and all of the areas surrounding the courtroom into a campaign. We need to convert Cummings' trial into a presidential campaign. We will use it to put Cummings' picture all across the country. We will organize large political rallies and Cummings will be our martyr. We want this persecution to end. That's it. Technology will render the government effort useless. Cummings can address ANC meetings via the internet. He can address meetings in the interior via the internet. He doesn't have to be in Banga. We can hold rallies and project giant screen and have Cummings talk to the people and explain how the government is stopping him from moving. Explain how it is his constitutional right and that he is a political prisoner. Alexander Cummings is a political prisoner. George Manneh Weah has a political prisoner. And Alexander Cummings will benefit greatly from the evil that has been done to him. So yes, we should not focus on this case and make it a source of worry and be uncertain about Cummings' path forward. Alexander Benedict Cummings will be on the ballot. And so what he needs to do is to make sure his campaign for presidency does not stop. Divide your staff into two. Build an iron fence, a Chinese wall between those working on the case and those working on the campaign. And launch your campaign. Continue. Someone is saying that Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, yes, I remember, in Ghanaian history, Kwame Nkrumah was sitting in the cell and he won the election. There's president even in Liberia. Another man from Maryland, Councillor Dan Moraes. Dan Moraes was falsely accused. He was imprisoned, no bail for him, and his supporters used it to build sympathy, and Dan Moraes won that election without being physically present for as long as his opponents were. The sympathy drove Dan Moraes' victory. And so we have to now exploit the stupidity of Bernard Ayiwe, which is a gift that keeps giving. That's the problem with Wakai. He doesn't have good allies. Either they are greedy and confused, or screws are loose. And so this, yes, it is unfair, it is unjust how they're treating Cummings, but it's also a blessing. And if Cummings' campaign team can take this approach, the government will see no more value in prosecuting Cummings. Because if the man is not distracted, if he is still pursuing his presidential ambition, then what is the value of spending all that money prosecuting him? Because you see, two people on trial here, the government and Cummings. Every time something happens in the court, Cummings' media team will run with an explanation. The government has to clarify. There has been two clarifications in the last week. One for Serena Sifas and one for Nathaniel McGill. So the government is also being distracted from his campaign messaging. It has to keep telling people, I have nothing to do with Cummings being prosecuted. Just as Cummings has to say that this is a ridiculous charge. So everybody working. But what is the benefit for the government? What is the political benefit? And if the public is not believing that Cummings is a criminal and Cummings is continuing to campaign, soon the government will find out that this move was a bad move and they will abandon it. And so this morning, I thought to focus on this particular subject so as to relieve the stress that people who support Cummings are under, because they believe that this could lead to his disqualification. Most Liberians do not trust the justice system. Even the Henry Costa that are running a mouth over the place does not trust the justice system. How many shows have Costa done insulting Serena Cephas and telling us that Serena Cephas is a common criminal? How many shows? Costa himself refused to turn himself over to the government for prosecution. When did he start believing in the justice system? Most Liberians do not believe in the justice system. That is why there's so much mob violence across the country. And so the justice system is not trusted. Nobody trusts this justice system. And so people were worried that although there's no evidence, the government could still force the judge to convict. But I just want to let you know that even if they did that, it would not disqualify Alexander Benedict Cummings from running, because the law does not support disqualifying a presidential candidate on the basis of a misdemeanor. I know about felony. I know about felony. Felonious crimes can be used as a basis of disqualifying candidates. But certainly not misdemeanor. And so we should campaign with a certainty of mind that Alexander Cummings is going to be on the ballot, and nothing should distract us. And as I said earlier, Cummings should not put a hold on his campaign. I think, if anything, we should step up the campaigning. We should go to the level where someone takes us to the neck, because the government objective is to stop Cummings from canvassing. So we have to exploit technology. We got to be innovative and push the campaign. And then the government will run out of rational justification for their action. There's no benefit. In politics, people don't do things for free. There has to be a benefit. A benefit. Either something you believe in will come about, either it will eliminate an opponent of yours, or it will further your cause. Thanks for being there. See you tomorrow with a brand new edition of the Demoy Factor.